Hey friends, Phil from the channel Dr. Fragrance, and today we're going to be talking about Victorian tobacco by Gents' brand Galleria Parfums. So stay tuned for that. If you like fragrance reviews, top 10 lists, first impressions, and cologne comparisons, hit that subscribe button for more content. So I have reviewed a couple of fragrances from the brand. I did pick up Cognac Cafe and By the Yuzu Grove because they did sound to be the most interesting fragrances that the house had to offer, at least for what I'm looking for or was looking for at the time. Yuzu is a nice, fresh fragrance, a little bit more lemony than I expected it to be, but still nice. And Cognac Cafe is a coffee-heavy, sweet fragrance that does kind of remind me of Black Phantom in a certain way, but it's also nicely done. Now, I've heard a lot about Victorian tobacco from a couple different reviewers and a couple different people. Certainly, I think a lot of people said that this is one that, in fact, some people did say that this is one that I'm definitely going to be liking. And so, of course, I decided to, or managed to get my hands on a decant to give it a try. Now, I have been able to try this one out a couple times, and I think I'm ready, or I've put together my thoughts, and I'm going to talk about it today. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Victorian tobacco. So I definitely did expect something, especially based on what other people were talking about, a little bit more rustic and a little bit more tobacco-y. And the name kind of implies that. I also was expecting this to be quite sweet. And in fact, looking at the notes, I thought it might remind me of other fragrances because it has beeswax in it and tobacco, but it actually does smell unique. And I would say out of all of the fragrances that I've tried so far from the brand, which is almost all of them, I do have samples of all the other ones, but I haven't really gotten around to really testing all of them. This is the most unique fragrance by far. This one opens up with, personally I get the tobacco right away, I get the booziness right away, and I get something in it that, at times does smell a little bit leathery. I don't think that's a listed note, but it does create this sort of image or impression of something very rustic, and that's where the name Victorian to me does smell or sound appropriate. It's totally appropriate because it does have this rustic, aged kind of a feel to it. Now, I was very surprised looking at the notes because the booziness is apparently gin. To me, it does not smell like gin. It smells definitely a lot more like a whiskey of some kind, but again, not discernible in the sense of something like single malt or malt by Acro, or even something like tobacco oud, which has also whiskey in it. So it does smell different, and it's very, very boozy at the beginning. And I would say it's also quite pungent. So there is something about this fragrance that has a little bit of a pungent vibe, and really I think it's the patchouli, because I think it's a little bit of a skanky patchouli, but I also get, interestingly enough, a little bit of a chocolatey vibe in the opening, and I know patchouli can have that. So I don't know exactly what note is giving me that impression, but it definitely has a little bit of that skanky patchouli kind of vibe with a little bit of that chocolatey kind of vibe too, which is really, really nice. The one thing about this is, even though it does have this sort of rustic, rugged feel to it, and that it does feel like something aged, underneath it there's this undertone of sweetness, which does give it a nice dimension. Now, interestingly enough, again, I've also had pretty good reactions with this one. I was not expecting that because I do find it to be, I think it's a little bit more challenging in a way than a lot of the other fragrances that he has to offer. And I think it is definitely more unique. So even just off the opening, this is going to be one that I would recommend trying out first because a lot of people love it, but a lot of people don't. And I feel like it's one of those fragrances where a lot of people are going to be divided on it. It's not so much an easy wear, like something like By the Yuzu Grove is very easy. Even Cognac Cafe is quite easy. But this one is definitely a little bit more for a certain type of person. It does have that rugged kind of edge to it. I would say, if we're going to think about fragrances as gendered, this does come off a little bit more masculine. And not that it really seems masculine to me, but I also think that I thought about it, and I thought about a woman wearing this, and I think it would be hard to pull off. Not that, you couldn't. I totally advise everyone to wear whatever you like. and not really to pay attention to gender in marketing, because honestly, some of the best fragrances are marketed only to women, but men love them, and vice versa. So most of that is actually just marketing. But there is something sort of rough about this, so you do have to be aware of that. And the quality is there. Now, as this one dries down, the booziness definitely dissipates. So the booziness doesn't stay there that long. It's really, really in your face, really alcoholic smelling. And then it tones down in about half an hour. But it does simmer down to more of a tobacco with a light sweetness under it. And sometimes I do get an almost powdery vibe. It's not full on powdery, but it is a little bit dusty. And again, that kind of contributes to that whole rustic feel, which is nice. So that's, to me, is the basic premise of the fragrance. And it is nicely crafted, and it is a unique fragrance, so I appreciate that about it for sure. But I also, like I said, don't think this is going to be for everyone. Performance on this one is also, to me, better than a lot of the other fragrances that I've tried from Galleria. This one does last quite a long time. Now, it's not going to project the whole time, but I put this on, say, for example, yesterday in the evening, and I woke up this morning, I could still smell it. Now, faintly I will say, but it was still there. So this one is definitely one that can push beyond 12 hours. But it's not going to be like a beast mode the whole time. It is one that also has quite a bit of sillage for the first few hours. So one of the first times I tried this one out, I had somebody smell it, kind of waved it in their hand or in their face to sort of see what they thought of it. And of course, it did actually get some positive reactions, which I'm always kind of a little bit surprised. And then when I walked away, they said how they could still smell it a couple of minutes later. So it does linger in the air for quite some time, and I find that that's really, really good. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of times I kind of prefer strong sillage to strong projection. So something that leaves a nice scent trail, or when it gets you walk by and it leaves a little bit of a scent in the air, or when somebody does get a little closer, they can smell it. That's nice. I don't necessarily want something that's going to fill an entire room, but sometimes I do. So this one, again, nice sillage. It does project, for 2 or 3 hours, and it's not ultra beast mode, but it is one that definitely has a little bit of projection to it. And the sillage, the duration that it lingers in the air, very strong. So very, very nice. I think this one would actually be best probably fall. It does have a bit of a, again, with that sort of rustic, rough vibe. I can definitely see this being really nice in the fall, with the leaves changing color, and it has this sort of orangey reds, and that works well with the image that this one paints. You could definitely wear this in the winter. I think it is strong enough. Even spring, it would probably be fine. I don't know about in the high heat, but maybe a summer evening, I wouldn't wear this when it's really hot out. But it is one that's not going to become exceptionally sweet. So because it is only a little bit sweet, heat tends to bring out the sweetness in a fragrance. And since this one is not that sweet, it's not going to become cloying. But it is a reasonably thick fragrance. So at least in my impression, I think it would become a little bit overbearing if it's really hot out. Now, occasions, I think this is definitely one where if you're going out somewhere nice, it would be good for that. It does have a little bit of that sort of, smoking cigar lounge kind of a vibe to it, just because it does have that sort of rustic, classy feel to it. And it is a boozy tobacco fragrance, so I think oftentimes that's the kind of environment I think of, these kind of formal occasions, and a little bit more of a gentleman's fragrance. So, you know what, I think it does suit itself well for those types of occasions. But honestly, like I said, these days especially, I kind of just wear whatever I feel like wearing that day. And the only thing I really think about is, to some degree, if it's going to choke me out because it's too hot to wear something that's thick or whatever. But like I said, formal occasion is probably nice. Maybe you're going to a nice dinner, a nice lounge. Maybe you're going to a suit and tie event. That kind of thing would work really well. So anyways, those are my thoughts on it. I do think it's good. I like it. It's not my favorite so far from the house. Again, I still gonna have to go with Cognac Cafe. There's a couple more to check out, but especially Cognac Cafe has actually even grown on me more than when I reviewed it, and I do like the way that it smells in the air quite a bit. So this one though, also good, and I think if you're looking to try or you want to try something that's really different from the house, this is the one to get a sample of. But the sample pack is, I think, $35 for the whole set, which is a reasonable price in my opinion to try out 7 fragrances, and I think it's worth trying out the whole set to see what you like. But guys, that is it. I'm going to cut the video there. Have you guys tried anything from Galleria Parfums? What do you think of Victorian tobacco? What do you think of the house in general? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.